You won't know who I am from what you perceive. But if you listen when we speak, then you will receive a glimpse of who I am. And then you'll believe and have a life of peace because your soul is at ease. You see, our source is the essence from which this world is conceived, which means that we were here before the bird and the bee. Now, if you have not guessed, I am eternity. But now, if you have guessed and you guessed correctly, that simply means we share the same destiny to realize we are the God and Trinity that is talked about in Christianity. Now some will say that vanity or go as far as insanity. It's because they believe in Western theology. But as we see, we choose ancient Kemetic philosophy. Not to say that's the only path to immortality. That's the path for we, this life, you see, as we devote our life to helping others be free, so they in turn can reach their full divinity. And this is done because of the he and I and the I and he. Peace and wholeness.
Hey, hey, greetings and heavenly salutations to all. Welcome back. Another Soulful Sundays. It seems as though we may not have been here in a month. And here we are in the summertime in the studio. And see if we can get a sound check because the AC is on. Let's see how we sound. Before we get too far along, you know. Oh, my check. Okay, yeah, that's just sounds pretty decent. Yeah. All right. Soulful Sundays, baby. Soulful Sundays. Soulful Sundays, yes. Soulful Sun deity. A little caveat, nuance, more evolution of my person's choice of words as it looks at each day as representative of a deity. Because each day, aka deity, has its own energetic, has its own feel. It's Sunday, it's sunrise. The most prevalent energy is the energy of the sun. Sunday, Monday, Friday, Venus, Saturn. It's my person who chooses to adapt it. expound on the day to say they, it. So the sun, deity. You are Haru, which is one of the archetypes and or personifications of the sun. Haru. Also Buddha, Yeshua, Shango, so forth and so on, the different deities, different archetypes of the personification of the Leo, zodiac sign, Leo, Sunday. At any rate, this little brief entertainment, starting right off the cuff. So long and Soulful Sundays. We say, we ain't holding back. Just keep coming with the information that allows my person to experience such ease and ease consistently. Learn. So let's go and get a little sound frequency going on with the instruments, at least the drums.
Habitation.
Indeed, indeed, a chef soup.
Sorry for my lateness.
Child. Oh, so child.
Jacuzza sends her love.
Indeed, indeed, yeah. What y'all do the rest of yesterday?
We went to, wow, he was way out. I think he might even catch Waldorf. One of her, she's a yoga instructor, so one of her friends who's a yoga, I know it's past Waldorf, so. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we you know, on the as a talent,
Right.
where the seal comes in and see
Mhm.
whose energy shows.
That option.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Anything still feeling it? Heart test there.
Mhm. Well, actually, prior to the heart test therapy, it was early yesterday morning, and I went live on TikTok.
Yeah.
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 And I talked about the lessons that I learned on my journey, and kind of resonating with the heart touch, realizing that I am enough, that things that I did prior to the start of my spiritual journey,
Right.
were to get everyone else, include parents, acceptance. I even talked about that a little. I went into a little more detail about that, about how when I was in my 30s, my father and I were bumping heads a lot because my journey was going in a way that he did not feel was the best way to go. I said, but years later, right before he transitioned, he let me know that all he did was had nothing but love for me, right, and just wanted the best. And then he actually apologized for the times that we were like bumping heads and stuff. Yeah. And just, understanding who my authentic self, and we always talk about you gotta love yourself, but you have to explain to people exactly what that is. Now you can go out and buy some flowers, get you some wine, right, take a bath, put on some soothing music. Wow. That's kind of our share. But to really begin to understand authentically who you are, you have to understand the darkest part of it. And I always share with people that when I first moved back to DC and I didn't have a job, and you used to always tell me, now you got the time and space, to go within. And I said, I wasn't there yet, even though I was on a journey, spiritual journey. I wasn't there yet because my focus was how I lost some money, how the financial ruin, and how I had all these external things, and I had resorted to living in a room. But understanding, as I start to mature, that those external things, like I was sharing with you once before, I learned how to live simple. I went and moved into a tiny house in West Virginia with no kitchen, no bedroom, and learned that I can listen, and be appreciative. But what I did gain, I gained nature, right outside my house. I can take my shoes off, ground. There's a tree, there's many trees. But I can hug the tree. I can talk. There's a porch where I can sit in the sun. So whereas I may not have the modern day appliance of a kitchen or stove or things of that nature, I have nature, and that supersedes everything else. And so I'm grateful for that. Yeah, Mama Tafu was telling us that her friends, they have a family house, and when you walk in, like they have all these racks of wine and liquor. And I guess they might be just a collector, but she was saying that they're not really drinkers. But she began to talk about how the husband, I don't even know what the make of the car was, but she was, as we were leaving, she was showing me the car and was saying that he gifted her this car and what have you. And I was seeing her, and she was, and I know these are her friends, and she's very happy for where they are in their life. But I shared with her, she couldn't know this respect. I said, but I'm not impressed with those things, which maybe 40 years ago, because it's okay, that's great, but I'm more impressed, and even in my intentions for a partner in my life, he doesn't have to necessarily be on the same. Everybody's spiritual walk is at different stages, but I want to communicate with people who are talking about, to loving self and each other, even if we are different in color, different in gender, holding this vibration. We are the chosen ones. The reason why this world has totally gone chaos is we're holding the vibration. If we get to, like people are saying, it's going politically, we know, but the reason why it hasn't totally collapsed is we're holding it. We're moving into a 5 dimension. And when you're beginning to raise your vibration to that level, and Jay-Z was doing, and I remember you said, and I kind of took it offensively, but now I understand. It's like, you're like, good, that's nice and cool and everything. But I don't really give too much energy to that. But I understand it. Like I try to limit, social media. It's just because I want to stay in this one particular vibration. And if you don't want your vibration to lower because of what's going on in the making, this is a mental. It was so interesting. A young lady was there yesterday before we were leaving. She said, "Can I take your picture?" Because I had shared with them, it was my birthday on Friday, and I told them how well, because I'm embracing 65. There's 65 years of incarnation, right?
Good girl.
And she was 35, and she said when she wanted to go on Facebook to put my picture, to ask her Facebook friends, does she look 65? So we exchanged Facebook, and I let her take my picture, and I said, yeah, let's exchange Facebook. Not that I really care, but it'd be interesting and know what people say. I have been posting facts of my life on social media, and then a couple of people on TikTok. And then I said chapter 65, and they were like, somebody said, "Ain't no way," and then somebody said, "Are you sure you're correct? You're correct. That's the correct number." Like, we know how many incarnations that, and it's just like, and I started looking at pictures. I looked at myself when I 30 years ago, and I look at myself, man, I look actually younger now than I did 30 years ago. And I'm releasing the stress. I'm very giving thanks to you because I understand the heart touch, the tapping is very needed. And it's not always that you're releasing, but you're releasing the negative too. But when you sharing with them yesterday, you said, you were laughing. So it wasn't so much that, oh, I'm so burdened. It's just like, you know what? It's like when you go to for your 1 year checkup with your doctor. He said, know what? You need to check in, just to keep the vibration. Right. Yeah. So it's not like every time you're doing inner work, it's not always necessarily shallow. Just fine tune, like you get your change on our go to, let's say your doctor, because I can put in people like 3 days a week. I don't work 5 days a week. Even they may not necessarily be spiritual, but to raise the level where they are, wherever they are, And when you're doing that, you have to also remember to keep yourself in that ma'at, that harmony, peace, and balance. So that's where I am.
That's awesome. Shit. Another link.
Okay.
This is textbook of what they call ascension.
Awesome.
You know, and this allows us to hold space for other people. You know, when we must realize this journey, it sounds simple, but the actual, to live it, have to come apart, it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes time. So, yeah, this is this road. What they call it? The embodiment.
Embodiment. I like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, embodiment. Embodiment. Scripture says, when the word becomes flesh.
Exactly.
Just that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did what you keep talking about. Right. And I followed the shaman. His name is Shaman too, on TikTok. He's in Utah. And he does lectures online. He's been doing the 42 laws of my mind. Lately, he has been getting people coming in his life that are Christians and what have you. And what I love about him is that he will allow them to see. Sometimes he brings them up, as a guest. And what he shares with, you get the I'm gonna pray for you, brother. You're lost. Satan has your false prophet, and that type of thing. But what is something that he said is so key. He said, I think I can accept what you're saying. He said, but you're still here because you feel my energy. You may not understand anything we're saying. He said, but you feel my energy. He said, because if you didn't, he said, if what you scrolled and saw my live and what it was with you, scroll on. He said, because, first time he got patience and so, because I don't know about it, but they not after the video. And he tells them, he said, I love you, and there is nothing you can do about it. He said, I come from a place of love, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, that's how we should be. Because I know when I first started in my journey, I was more social conscious. And as you well know, every protest, I've been there. And I remember the time he said, as you grow, you'll understand. And I said, yeah, we are not oblivious to what's going on. Right. I was sharing with Mama Chihuly yesterday. It was yesterday, Friday. And I said, you don't have to give Trump his prize. Or something he said. She said, what did he say like that? He said, he was talking about birthright citizenship. And I said, he said, when the Constitution was written, and that was the enslaved children, the children from slavery. And I said, every now and then, and he even one time before, when he said, this country was built on the back. Now, somebody might say, oh, well, okay. He said a couple of things. I believe that when times when he is learning to accept it, and then maybe there are times he's saying that he doesn't realize that he's saying.
Right.
I told her, I said, he hasn't known.
Right.
And she was like, she was saying, but everything about what I said, I've been saying it. I said that when he was in office last time, I said, you know, and I shared with some of my friends who are Christian. I said, if you say it doesn't matter who's in office, God is still on the throne. Well, did you not believe that he did not know that this was not going to occur? Right. And even the scripture says, was I'm trying to think the scripture about rest. You know, it's in the Talmud, but there are many scriptures in the Bible. If you choose to follow that, it said, take my hand upon thee. You know, the yoke is easy. Right. My burden is light. Okay, I knew it was coming. That's it. And that's what I said. I said, okay, I just read where possibly medicating. I don't think it's going to stop it, but it's going to slash it. But guess what? We will find ways to I want to use the word survive. We will find ways to live. Now I refuse to survive. I'm going to live. And living starts here. And I used to share that with the young guys that worked at the DCGL when they saw one of their friends being released, and they would say, I'll be glad when I get free. And I said to them, I said, you can do that before you leave here. Right. And they had a clue what I was talking about. And I gave them a picture of a brain that had a chain lock. I said, so describe what's your interpretation of the picture? And one of them was really into. He said, so what you're saying, Ms. Brown, is that we can free our minds before we get free. I said, yes. I said, because do you realize that a lot of people that's walking free physically, but they're not free. And you know, they were teasing like, yeah, what are you into? Like, just important, but it has to be. And I had to. This is song by this Nigerian sister named Thames, and it says Fremont. It's got close to reggae beat. But I love this song because that's exactly where we want to be. I think about I used to love K Spade. Went to her purse, and I went to an outlet, and I forget what year it was. She had at that time she had a 12-year-old daughter. K Spade is a designer, and she was married. And then I read that she took her own life. Wow. She had bipolar. And you say to yourself, this is a woman. She had sold her company, so of course she's sitting pretty, but she was a designer. K Spade. And then this woman takes her. I think she's like in her early 50s. And so you can have all the money. I think the script even say that you can gain the whole world and lose yourself. And that's exactly what I thought about her. And I said, then she left. I guess her daughter was probably 20-something years old. I said she left this daughter, and how did this daughter go on? Because her mother is no longer physically. And I always meditate. I meditate on things like is it really worth it? To like, oh, let me get this. Not really. So what I want to get is continue knowledge. I mean, and then some spiritual people that like Sean True Love Thursday, that he had the meditation in the morning, and he had his brother come up, and his brother showed us this. I don't know if it was a map or a picture he took. And you could see an image of Africa. It was like esoteric knowledge, and I said that's great. I said, and I don't profess to know all of that. I said, but I can't pick up my Egyptian Book of the Dead. I can pick up my Kabbalion. I may not know all of it, but because he talks about the Anunnaki. I may not understand. I do understand it. I may not have full knowledge of it. I said, but what I do know is if I need to manifest, you know, I write my intentions down, you know, and I go because at one point I was like, oh my God, like I was in kind of impressed with that. And I'm like, okay, you know, and I told Mama too that I said, you know, she, you know, people share Reiki master. I said, well, you know, I am what's ever needed at the time.
That's right.
I said, I may not know a whole lot. I said, I do know how to take it. I sharing with her how when I used to hang out with you and you would be doing like this. And I told her, I said, one point I was like, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm just moving like that. Right now, I understand it. And she was like, yeah, it's important to move and stuff like that. Right. But I'm not, you know, so I had, you know, as you well know, I have a friend named Donna, and I would actually live to say I will leave her parents, but he lost a dear friend Friday. And I was sharing when he asked me, was I a queen mother? And I said no, like that. So I was talking to Alice about it. She said, girl, let me tell you, before they make you a queen mother, you have to like kind of be responsible for a community and all. And I said, oh, that's like a lot of work like that. And but I said it's interesting that he saw that. You know, you asked, oh, you're a queen mother, and then I was going to say, you never know. You don't know what your destiny holds for you. I said, that's true. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Shepsu, the mother of me.
My aunt, right? Yeah. And the reason why I changed that is because my aunt Ray was her title. It's Cheryl. I changed it. Yeah, that's and when I go to Ghana, my friend Quay Food asked me if I had ever had a naming ceremony. I didn't. When I went to Ghana 18 years ago, our guide that was with us for 10 days, what he did, he came on our bus and asked us to give him write down the day of the week. And then at the end of our time there, we had like a little dinner. Well, we had a dinner, and then he presented. Your name was Oswald, so it wasn't actually naming ceremony. So I was kind of quick, and I said, no, I actually haven't had one. He said, you know, when you come back, I'll arrange that. And I was telling Mama Jakuda, I said, I think I know. My name is going to be Oswald Hashepsumar, correct? All right. Yeah. And that's what he used to call me Oswald back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, that's that power, that portal, that appellation. Yeah. So the journey here for like 11 years ago.
11 and September. I can use you for a reference, but guess what? I don't need no reference no more because I'm free. You know, people call you and say, "Oh, I'm applying for the job. Can I use your reference?" Yeah, I don't need a reference.
That's something. That's
11 years. Yeah. I was telling my mom that. I said I walked in ISC, a Christian, and I was invited to come in. I said, a chef was standing there talking about the come at the tree of life, and I was sitting there like, is he speaking German? Because I don't know what in the world. I walked in there, and I said, what are these people into? And I said, I remember, you know, there was a little fella eating fellowship afterwards, and Dorita came up because she could see my face, and she asked me who invited me. It was Nana Malaya Rocker. And I remember asking her, like, what are y'all into? And she smiled and she said, well, what do you think? Like that. And I'm like, y'all are in this blasphemous. And what is he talking about? Like, I never forget that. Yeah. And I told her, I said, y'all don't believe in Jesus? Like that. And I was telling her about all these miracles. And I love what Dorita did. She said, what if I told you you did that? I'm like, oh, so you're not acknowledging God like that? And that's when she challenged me to come to her spiritual class. And I was still going to my church. But then, one day I just decided, okay, I need to know more about Yeah, I think he's got.
It was like what Shaman Trula said, the people that came on his feet. Like,
Right.
he was a devout Christian, but even though she invited you to come here, you had to be open to come. And once you came, you was there, and even stayed and had conversations afterwards.
Right.
So, you know, you was like, what the hell y'all up into?
Right.
You like really wanted to know.
And that's exactly. And just you know, your background on him. He's a Generation Xer. But he was a Baptist minister, and he was an LDS minister, Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, for 30 years. Wow. Wrote a book, stuff. And he said that in the live, he said to those who were, still, responding to him like that, he said, I would venture to say most of the people that are in here who are now the chosen ones have been in church. And I said, yeah. I wrote back and said, I was one of them, yeah. But and that's like we telling my cousin Walter. I said, well, and he's kind of calmed down. I said, Walter, we don't want to fight the Christian. We don't want to fight Christianity, exposed. I'm like, the subject matter in all of us who are walking, and sometimes it can be hard when you are faced with racism. It can be hard. I do have what they say in church testimony. When I first went to West Virginia, and I got in a part-time job as being a counselor for children, but I had to get a background check, and I had used all my money to move up there, so I hadn't gotten paid, and I had applied for retirement, but you had to wait, to the date of your interview. So my cousin Leslie, I was living with Leslie, and she gave me cash to pay for my background check. So I drive all the way to the little place, and the lady's about to take me back, and I said, "Oh, do you take cash?" And it was a Caucasian woman, and she looked at me and she said, "Only checks and credit cards, but there's nowhere on it that says we do not take cash." Right. At this point, she's about to close because she's closing for lunch. Right. I contacted my supervisor and I said, Gloria, she said that she don't take cash. And so Gloria said, well, I find that kind of odd because they sent many people for background checks, right? And I said, oh, she's getting ready to close up for lunch. But I think it had been like 15-mile, and I wasn't trucking all the way back home. Leslie lives in Falling Waters. This place was in Martinsburg. So, and so my supervisor said, well, I'm going to come up there. She's going to bring her, I was going to give her the cash. She's going to use it for her. So I said, well, the lady's closing down from 12 to 1. And she said, okay. So I get off the phone with her, and I asked the lady, I said, well, can I sit in your, it was like a house set, like sort of like this, but it was the office. So I said, well, can I sit in your lobby? And she said, well, no, like that. I said, okay. And I said, well, do you mind if I just stay in my car in the parking lot? And she said, that will be fine, like that. So I said, Gloria calls me back. She said, I'm on my way. She said, have you eaten? I said, no. So she brought me in like a Popeye's sandwich. So she got there right around the time that the ladies opening that. And Gloria was annoyed. But the ancestors were talking to me. They said, we know you're annoyed, but watch, just observe. I said, okay. So then, I gave cash to Gloria. She did, then, the lady took the credit card. So she was taking me back. And now they do it electronic, back in the day, they did, now they just, it's like a laser thing. But then she was also going to take my picture. I never knew anybody could do that. But then she said, I had a hip wrap on, and she said, well, I'm going to need you to remove that. I said, do you tell people to do that if it's for religious reasons? And she apologized. She said, oh, man, I'm sorry now. And so we took it, and, I said, well, thank you, and have a good day. And Gloria's like, let's just go. I said, Gloria, something during happened. I'm not sure what. Gloria calls me an hour later and says, do you know your background check came back in 1 hour? Normally, a background check takes a few days. And I just started laughing. Gloria's like, I said, have you ever known that to happen? And she said, no. And just photographer been following this family for about 10 15 minutes, and some of them have special needs. So so I forget what part of West Virginia, but they do have that. But what I noticed in Martinsburg is I have, when I go places, it's, Caucasian men. They, just recently I was taking some to the Goodwill, some clothes to Goodwill. Guy was walking, and he got to the door before I did. He swung that door open. I said, "Oh, thank you very much." He said, "No problem." And I said, what I tell people, I said, when your aura or when your light is here, people see that. So it's not, and I always for my people, but I also understand that that when that light shines, there's nothing they can do. Most of my clients are Caucasian, and before I schedule an appointment with them, I always ask the question. I think some of them are like a little shocked when I ask this question. But I said, "Oh," and I said, "I don't know if you can tell by my voice, but I say African American, because I don't know if they understand melanated. But I'm an African American female. Would that be a concern of yours?" And they go, "Oh no," and for the most part, has it. I have a client. I call him John. John is 55. John has multiple health issues, and he still smokes. He has COPD. He has CA, congenital heart failure, and he wanted a therapist because of anger issues. He's been in jail before. He's been a heroin addict. He is a father and a person that his companion. They're not legally, but he's been with her for a while. And if you can, I'm trying to put a visual of what he looks like. If you can envision a mountain man, hair, scruffy hair, kind of heavy. Yeah, you can envision this. That's him. And he calls me Miss Brown. He doesn't call me Jim. And he has an issue with anger. This last section, he just recently got released from jail because of the 10-year punishment that finally pulled out. And he wanted to reach the people that had called the police are no longer. And he said they very glad that they're still that they're not that they died because that's the way we use retaliation. And then this comes really good with self-esteem. He said, "Yeah, I believe in what the Bible says, do unto others before they as they would do unto you." I said, "You really think that that's what that means, right?" And he said, "That's in the Bible. Do unto others that they would do unto you." Oh, yes, and all the time. But so let's look that up and see. Right. It's called the Golden.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
The Golden.
That's right. It was just the way you said it. It sounded fun.
Do unto others as they would have them do unto you.
Yeah.
See, he took that part of They did me wrong, I'm gonna do them wrong. Right. And he pretty much has said that has been his mantra his entire life, right? And I said, okay, let's look this up. And I looked it up, we broke it down, and but in the summer, you continue to treat that person as you would like to be treated, even when they don't treat you well. I said, man, if they were silly and you would tell them, what would you do? And he said, my freedom. I said, anything else? And he couldn't think of it. I said, your family. Because you will no longer be there to be patriarch, it's your family. And he said, oh yeah, like that. Then he was telling me that he did not take a plea, that he because the charges it occurred at the nighttime in the same daytime, and he had witnesses. I said, okay. First thing I asked him, I said, your witnesses have come back? He said, I said, you ever been? I said, have you ever been in front of a prosecuting attorney? Which he had. And he said, okay, I know where you're going with that. I said, where am I going? They're going to probably try to discredit your witness. I said, but this is what I would suggest. I said, to get a journal, everything that you would want to express to I don't argue. I have chef food. A chef food? Oh, nice to meet you. I'm going to eat the just keep that for a long time. So we have a chef and then a chef too. I know, right? You missed the drumming. Yeah. But I was telling Jordan the whole today, the day was. Oh wow, yeah. But that was the 20. Guess we'll see what happens. It's not music right now. Okay. I know. So basically, I said to him to write down what he would have said to Ed based on the and he also has issues with the extended family. And I said, write it down. I said, but what I would suggest you not to start off, you make me feel. I said, start positive. I'm thankful for mother. I'm thankful for life. Even with your friends that you with that are no longer here. And one of them is his, but his stepson. I thank you that I had a chance to be your stepfather. And I was sharing this with you because at the end he said, and he said this after every session, he said, I thank you, Miss Brown, because I just thank you so much for listening to me. And I said, it is no problem, John. Like that, right? And he said, because she's like really more organized. I'm like, all right. And it's just, and I say that because on the first one, you would look at, you could make an assumption that you don't want to hurt her there. Right. But that's not who you, that may have to be. Right. Chicken noodle for the soup. Right.
Oh, sure.
Right. Do they still make that series? I remember that chicken noodles for the teenagers. Yeah. Yeah. And it is also a lesson for me not to do. I see also have this is on Facebook. You want to? I don't know if I can say this.
Oh, you can say it. I admit, son.
I know that in case my
oh, you people. Okay.
You might yeah, but I think I might take that.
All right. All other things.
That one was
we're only the matrix.
yeah, that one was okay. But it is this is another chicken noodle soup for the soul. Yeah. How is it taken? For two. Yeah. Yeah, we just sitting here. Chef said he didn't have like actual talk. He did hard touch on me yesterday. Yeah, it's been years. I can't remember it, but according to him, I had a friend of mine. She to break these baskets because she wanted to come. According to them, I was. She said I was real and last, except at the last, like the child.
Yeah. It started out as a cry, but then after then it transformed to the laughter.
Right.
Oh, it's funny. Right. Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay, so his daughter took over, right? Yeah. What? She retired. It's 5 years. She's been in the house for 5 years. So it's the 20s when he left. We just can't even get no, I was like, that's the only claim. Exactly. She started a new series today on joy. Joy is this thing. So she tried to do what she tried to do a little quick. Right. Right. The way things move it, we need to get to the word. We'll see how we use it all next week. Yeah, you got
uncontrollable joy.
Yeah, I used to work at DCGL when we were my info too when we were in the jail. And we had this one social worker, I forget where she was from. Like the national. She would come in and be like, good morning. And I'm like, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. One time I said, how you do? Which is great, right? You gotta, I don't know. I mean, you know how inmates can be. They like one thing trying to, gauge if she's being fake. Yeah. But they got used to it. She walked in, and they started doing it with her. I love it. Yeah. And I'm a mental health there. So, okay. I see what West Virginia is. So I don't like to use the word retired. I had to use my out there. And I went back to a job that I had this time and asked them could I be a contracting therapist. And they have he's like, Jacob, we are all clients. Yeah, my social returned at the front. On my way back to Martinsburg, yes, yeah. That dinner so good. Therapy back in 2023. And I realized, you know, even my supervisor said, like, I don't know what you're doing. When I, yeah, but yeah, the other one is on social media a lot, and the other one has a lot of trauma stuff with her. Yeah, and so I went when I just when I retired in March, I just went came in March. I'm not like I took the step in Virginia. I never said I could go. I just the grade or the number. Virginia had that. That's all. And then I took 65 years around the sun on Friday. And I just made a plan. I'm like, I don't really want to. I can just. What I am going to do is make it like 30. I'm going to get like 30. Yeah, and I did, you know, when I interviewed with my supervisor, I said to him, because he saw how I was dressed, and I said, one theory, I said, but I incorporated metaphysical, and he said, what you do? Like that. So, he said, so just a lap, diffuser, I used to put that on my office, I played meditation music. Yeah, this kind of, you know, I don't have an office thing. I do a lot on telehealth. I yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Right. I was really get into oh, it's been on health. The next week. This is okay. It's bridging the very, very, yeah. You like to call me a corporate therapist, so we're bridging those worlds.
So no one left behind. No. Got everybody covered. Yeah. One trigger the other, and everybody in between. Right. Yeah. It's important to I was there with I said before, like when I was in church, when I was a Christian,
I did see people, in the church that had mental health issues, but I don't like to say in our community, we don't talk about it, especially when you're in the church. You go, when the altar call is called, you go you let them know what's going on with you. They lay hands and they tell you to give it to Jesus. But when I lived in Stockton, we had a guy, he was in the military, and his nieces and his nephew's mother was he just expressed himself.
I didn't be going over about a bowl and then I was
Oh, yeah.
and you faster with these bowls. No.
You like jerk chicken and brown rice? Because we went to the Taste of Caribbean Friday, and Mama said, "Who's it?" About her. I said, "Well, I'm taking to the chef." Like, okay, he's in the car. No, it's
You were talking about not talking about Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Call.
And yeah, so we have was in the military at Quantico. He was from Minneapolis, and his sister, she lived up there, and she, she was struck.
Yeah.
So he brought the first time around. He brought a niece and nephew, and then his other niece, the mother had terminated her mom, and he's actually going to adopt her. He's the middle one. She came to church that Sunday, and I immediately knew. I said she's did some emotional things. They diagnosed her with, I think it was ADHD. And so I said, okay, and Keon he's married. He was a single, you're 30-something year old guy. You got teenagers, and I'm like, wow. One day, my co-pastor, after church, she came to me and she said, Keon is having a really hard time with the people with the middle. And she said, I told him, that he was a social worker, but I also said that she could probably counsel. And then I told my co-pastor, I said, I can do that under your guidance. Like, it would be for pastoral counseling, which means I would have to report to her, give her some knowledge. She was fine with it. And I talked to him, and I went to the house just to see how they were all interacting. I saw a manual. Now, keep in mind, he's in the military. He got his manual of discipline. So what I did, I took the three of them out. Right. I took the three of them out to McDonald's. I said, we're going to leave you here. And so I said, God, let you hear it. I said, how is it for people? And they were like, oh my God, these are drill sergeants. Wow, like that. I said, okay. I said, okay.
Oh, you got a clean butt? Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Right? Exactly.
Jordan. See you come back.
Yeah, real sergeant.
Oh my God. They look like it. It was so mad. Oh my God, exaggerating. I think I saw something. It was a white notebook like that. Right? It was funny.
Yeah.
And so, we go back, and I said, great meeting you, blah, blah. I said, let me talk to your uncle, individually. And I said, Kevon, I said, first of all, I want to commend you. You are young man. He was in his early 30s. And I said, and you're taking your sister's children. And they came like, they were like in middle school at the time. And I said, that is no good. That's a big time. I said, Kevon, they not in the military like that. But I require order in this house. I said, and you can get that. I said, you can get that for. I said, like this, like that. Then I was talking about the preacher. I said, you just shit, it's like that. And I said, and you have to deal with her a little differently in different cities. I'm laying on my couch on Friday night. I'm taking it easy. I get a phone call. So I had scheduled I was gonna come once a week to do family counseling and then sit with him at the district. I get this phone call. This girl just out of control. I need you to come right. Give me a few minutes. We didn't live far from. I go over there, and here she. So you know how you feel with water. He asked them to do it outside. They so a balloon fell in the house, and he started getting on there. He asked Lucretia to clean up, and she was off on him or whatever. And I said, Lucretia, can you go to your room? I'm talking to your mom. She goes upstairs. And I said, I said, I know you want order. I said, what do you think? I'm like, it's water. I'm not disregarding that you want to order in your house. I said, it's water. I said, here again, if you get rid of this, sit down as a family and you put clear, realistic expectations of your nieces and nephews. That's what I'm going to do.
Sorry, can I get a bag? Get in the kitchen so I can get a bag for this. And I'll put the food and make some coffee. Did you want anything to drink? There's tea and water. I don't think that.
So I come into realistic expectation, and it's okay if sometimes you may need to ask for help like that. Because that's it. The producer is different for her brother and sister. I said, first of all, their mother gave her up, relinquished her forever. So she said, therefore, you want to adopt her. I said, but you got to fully know what's going on. Right. And I said, and no one is going to knock you if you realize I may just kind of keep her as a foster child like he's doing here, but I said, someone can think about it. I said, go to the I said, do you believe he loves you? Yes. I said, oh. She said, yeah, you be a little rough. said, he is a military. I said, but we talked. I said, but with him, you hold yourself because he didn't ask me to reach out. And I said, so can you take responsibility? And she said, yeah, I guess. And so I said, and I realized it in fact. I said, I feel that you don't like this. And she said, I understand what you mean. And I said, no, maybe you're not the best looking person. Maybe you don't have the best personality. I don't know. I said, because you don't actually think so. So I'm agree with you. I said, your personality is sharp. You don't look good. I was going through with it. And Keelan is sitting on the steps, right? And I said, so I'm agreeing with you. And I had a compact mirror. I said, look, take a look. I see why, yeah. I see why you don't like that girl just looking back at you. And I said, so she's like, why would you say that, Jimmy? Why would you say that? And she's getting happy. And he's sitting on the steps in case he feel like he. And I said, we're fine, like that. You go back downstairs, like that, right? And she goes, and I said, I was like, why are you getting upset with me? Because I'm agreeing that you're not a good person. You don't look good appearance-wise. Why would you get upset? And she's like, I said, because you don't like yourself. And she got to this. She got up here. She like, don't you say it! Don't you say it! I mean, tears coming, everything. And she said, and I said, why? Why can't I? And it came out. You're right. I don't like that. I feel like I'm a problem child. Elon come back because he is witnessing this, right? And I said, he's like, should we do something? He said, well, why did my mother give me all of that time? And I said, and I just sat by. She'll take that, I got her tissue, her tears, blow her nose. I said, so now what can I do? She said, I want to know, I want to stop feeling like I'm the problem. I said, okay. And it's not the oh, and so, I left her and I was like, y'all bothered me on a Friday night like that. And I said, she's going to be fine. I said, she got, would you like to? Yeah. And I told her, I said, it's going to be a process. And she did. She got, and she continued to live. I don't know if she did or not. But they finished high school. They actually went back to Minneapolis. I think they lived with their mother. And the last time I heard this was years ago. Lucretia was mother. Yeah. And so people with that technique is called midnight. Is that when you get them to the state where they just lose it. Right. But I knew it was gonna be fine. That's a skill right there. Yeah, skill. Sure. Okay, now I'm rushing it. The honey's supposed to take a while. What's it? It'll come out. See? You stand in front of you. Let me know when you take it off. Oh, your head. See, do the face. What? What? Okay. You start to talk a little bit more. That's what you gotta do. You gotta talk. Use your words. Right. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate.
Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words. Use your words. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Use your words to communicate. Oh, you got a wrong side too everywhere.
How does Jordan? He reminds me of Alistair playing still shiny. Had the same deal. So yeah, here's something. I'm watching these. I've been 21 or 4 Spinators. Yeah, I just recently came back from Ghana. My high school, she had the family over there, so I stayed with them. Her son married a Ghanaian woman, and their children, Shadi, Maya, and Yash. Yasher been here. Yasher? He just turned one. Maya, the first night I was there, she asked me, but I'm having dinner. She says, and what tribe do you belong to? 4 years old. And I said, the G question. 4. And I said, you know, mine, I can't understand. And I said, her mother is Tamar, and she's raising her mother from so, mine, that, and I'm for Lani, and I'm for Musa. That's how they say Musa. And I put that on Facebook. I said, wow, she's challenging me. I'm going to do that African ancestry. They do it from Matacon. Yeah. Like that. I go to church with Dr. I met her one time. Yeah. I said, that's a deep one. Don't know. Yeah, she sure did.
And then you're too. I've been like things with I can't think of my name.
MBA?
No, not here in this case. I forget. Cornell.
Cornell
was it's one of them in that health. But I feel very resonant with him talking about not wanting to get my DNA over to be able to take any exactly. But I'm starting to be really deeply called into like a lot more ancestral work and reading and it's calling to know more about my roots specifically where I'm actually from, Virginia. Yeah, and so I'm more quickly now becoming more amenable to the idea. And also I have a project that I actually want to do with the two of them, with African ancestry, and combining that with the website. So if we have I do intergenerational. It's the thing of trauma. I do a lot of Jesus work.
I did it as a social work. I love doing geograms. Yeah. A geogram is like it's a diagram. And you put like your mother, father, and then children. Yeah, under that, and then it's a broken line. Like if your mother and father is divorced, like
there's a lot of different things depending on the
dynamic of the relation.
I do the 3 generations of my parents and the children and the generation of
right.
And so with the extended family and the children, the creation, mine can get real.
I really those were so much fun. I love be a sister with a person.
Exactly. That's how it starts. Talking like with folks, so I can get a just overview of we're working with. That tells you so much. Understanding the thing, what's been transmitted and what that you understand. Where did you learn? How did you learn what conflict is and how conflict is managed? What did you learn about divorce and marriage and all these things? I have all the conversations when I'm doing Virginia and making it.
I don't steal your idea, but like, it's not like I don't want to take your idea. I don't want to do it. If you don't mind, if I shit, if
We need it.
yeah. So let's start off like,
Yeah. It's one of the things I do within the first 3 seconds. Usually, it's how we make contact dependent based on what where people are coming in and if they're coming in like any questions that need like specific money or if it's typical doing before getting to know how to way that I introduce myself, using the patient themselves, and then I invite them to things and I like to do it too. I do a lot of partner and family work, so I let the other people listen while I'm answering one person and conversation. What did you say? So you went to Ghana from
May 26th. No, from but actually, my friend Allison, I went to her house and left my card in. She lives in St. Okay, and I got an Uber to
oh, you just came back.
Came back June 15th.
Oh, okay.
I was telling people it's get to a point I forgot what the days were. I'm like, what's I mean, that's how it is when you like just kind of. I'm not answering an email. I ain't answering a phone call.
I don't watch the news. I probably watch the TV. So I'm like,
but not
the time. Don't be.
No, I wasn't. She was.
Yeah. How long were you there?
3 weeks.
Okay.
I went on my mom's birthday. I believe that she was very But 18 years ago, I went with a group, the National Association of Black Social Workers. That was good. But I went with a friend of mine that we used to work together in Princeton County School. So it was very different from tour. You know, you have a guy, you're like, go out on my own. Yeah.
It's a weird though. It's a weird though.
Oh, a chef to go get you okay. You want to close it out?
Well, it's alive. We informed.
Okay, so when you close it out, then I'll take this. I love the way you stand to me. Doing it.
It works. Yes. Very cool.
So your spirits is putting into a whole lot of how you got it.
Here, tell
Oh, okay, she came in.
I actually about a year ago.
Okay.
All in the world with the show is a co-creation. I'm sure it is perfect. Uh-oh, we gotta get this dick right. Uh-oh. Got the close out piece. That's our children's birthday. Sunday. We get the sound. Close the door out.
I have it, so far, so far, I have it, so far, so far. This is what you want.
Did you go to the restroom or anything?
See it coming. Saw it coming.
Ta-da!
Right. There you have it. Farewell salutations from the Charlie Brown. There you are. Enjoy the process. May you do every experience.
Thank you. I got it. Yeah.
Love like no.
It was called McConnell Market, and it said if you go there, preferably have somebody with you. But I went by myself. She was an elder, and I saw it, and I went and I said, I said, mother, I said, how much was it? And she goes, what did she say?
You won't know who I am from what you perceive. But if you listen when we speak, then you will receive a glimpse of who I am. And then you'll believe and have a life of peace, because your soul is at ease. You see, our source is conceived, which means that we were here before the bird and the bee. Now if you have not guessed, I am eternity. But now if you have guessed, and you guessed correctly, that simply means we share the same destiny. To realize we are the God and Trinity that is talked about in Christianity.